I just am feeling so much what you just said, how important it is we see each other. I just came from February 14th, February 13th, February 15th, One Million Rising, and I just kind of flew here. I didn't need the airplane, because if you go on the website, 1millionrising.org, you'll see that millions and millions of women and men, many men, rose up this year around the world to demand an end to violence against women. And I feel like I have great news to share. And I want to begin with the great news, and then we'll get to the harder stuff later. But 200 countries rose. I was literally glued to my computer for 2 days weeping. And weeping because what I saw in human beings in 200 countries was a desire, like everybody has in this room tonight, to transform consciousness. To really say our time has come and we can't wait anymore. And to see people dancing in the streets of Somalia, and to see people dancing in the streets of Bangladesh, and Gambia, and Ghana, and Mexico. They danced at the pyramids, thousands of pyramids. People danced at the Mexican pyramids. And to see the array of dances, and the array of creativity, and the array of hearts, and the array of human desire to break out of this contained thing that we're in right now, this container, this paradigm, this mindset that is killing our hearts, killing the earth, killing women, killing all of us, because men are as destroyed by violence against women as women are. It contaminates them even further. I want to say that I think in the first year of 1 Million Rising, the idea was to invite women around the world and men, because if 1 out of 3 women on the planet will be raped or beaten in her lifetime. That's a UN statistic and a World Health statistic. So that's 1 billion women. 1 billion women on this planet will be raped or beaten in her lifetime. And I would just dream of that at night. I would try to picture what 1 billion dots were. We couldn't even put 1 billion dots in this room. I mean, 1 billion is just forever. And that many women, souls have been invaded, their bodies have been crushed, their hearts have been broken. And we think, if we just think what would have happened if those billion women hadn't been attacked, or raped, or beaten, or cut. What would this planet be? Imagine the energy that would have been released, and the creativity, and the vision, and the life force, and the possibility. So when we first put the invitation out to dance, the first year was amazing. And people just took to the streets everywhere in the world, and danced and released their trauma and understood the collectivity of dancing and coming together, and how much we have all been forced to leave our bodies. And when we leave our bodies, we leave the mother, because our body is our connection to the mother. And the reason we can't honor our mother is we don't feel the mother, because we have been forced to leave these bodies. But when we dance, we come back into our bodies, and we have our feet on the ground, and we can feel the pulse of the mother. And this year it was amazing because drumming was the theme. And to see the drums and the heartbeat from Africa to Mexico to India, across this planet, you could just feel the heartbeat in people coming back so that they could feel the heartbeat of the mother. And the second year, the coordinators got together, and there are 25 global coordinators, and they said, we want to go further, and we want to rise for justice. And last year, all across the planet, people got very specific about what they were rising for. And they began to look at all the intersectional issues. How can we really rise for violence against women if we're not looking at poverty? How can we rise for violence against women if we're not looking at the complete discrimination and evisceration of Native women? All these issues are completely connected, and for so long, particularly in this country, we've worked in our silos. You work on the environment, I work on women, someone else works on ending racism. But in fact, that's how this whole system has us fooled. Because it's one story. We're in one story. The idea that we can do one without the other is just completely impossible. And I want to just talk a little bit about that, because I think one of the beautiful things that we saw last year was the beginning of weaving this tapestry together. So, for example, restaurant workers in this country who make $2.13 an hour, and they have for the last 40 years, they are mostly dependent on tips. Now, people think of waitresses or waiters as working in fancy restaurants in New York City where they make a lot of money. But in fact, the majority of people who are in the restaurant business are women. They work in places like Olive Gardens. They make $2.13 an hour and very little tips. So they, first of all, have a very hard time surviving. But the tips they do make, they are dependent on the kindness of strangers, which means they are dependent and allowed for sexual harassment because that's how they get their money. So in the restaurant business, sexual harassment is the highest than any other business in this country. And there are 11 million workers. It's the highest growing industry in this country. So last year, the restaurant workers joined 1 Billion Rising and understood that intersection between sexual harassment and low wages, sub-minimum wage. And they rose. And right now, they have a bill in front of Cuomo in New York to raise the minimum wage, and it could actually pass. Justice movement last year in India. The amazing feminists in India worked with rickshaw drivers, and they did gender training and sensitivity, and they trained 100,000 rickshaw drivers. And now on rickshaws it says, "My religion is respecting women," which is amazing. In Peru, where there's a lot of development right now, there was a lot of sexual harassment on the streets. And 1 Billion Rising organizers got together with the construction workers and they said, "Why don't you join our movement?" And they did. And they turned every construction site in Peru into a sexual harassment-free site and joined in complete and utter solidarity. And I think one of the beautiful things about the 1 Billion Rising campaign is that it's completely owned by communities. They determine what happens, but we have global solidarity at each other's back. And one of the things I think we all know is you can't be brave without your posse. You can't be brave without the people behind you. You can't be brave without a sisterhood. You can't be brave without people pushing you forward. And I think one of the great things about global solidarity is you all know you're rising on that day, so the eyes of the world are on you. In the Philippines this year, for example, they rose and they demanded the resignation of their president. 1 Billion Rising, the headlines was, 1 Billion Rising demands the resignation of Aquino. Now that happened because of global solidarity around the world. And why did that happen? Because the president didn't pay attention to women who, after Taliban, were suffering miserably. The president didn't pay attention to the fact that a transgendered woman was murdered by the US soldiers who have invaded due to the visiting forces agreement, and he hasn't gotten justice. We can go down the list, but they have the solidarity now of women around the world going, "Go for it.